Hi, the information I'm going to give you today is fundamental for increasing the awareness of your inner energy. I want to talk about the four main directions energy can move within you. That is up, down, in, and out. And this is the chart I'll be using to explain these movements. One caveat before I start. This topic is huge and there's a lot to cover. But in this video, I just want to introduce the basics. But this is something I'll definitely come back to in other videos. Essentially, as I said, your inner energy can move either upward, downward, inward, or outward. Before examining each of these four, please understand that these movements are neutral in themselves. This is just how your energy moves, and you need to accept it in the first place. That being said, it's true that some of them are considered more negative than others. Like, for example, contracting, which is an inward motion, or feeling depressed, which is a downward motion. However, condensing your energy is also an inward motion, and it can certainly be seen as positive. The same thing for grounding, which is a downward motion. Your energy is constantly moving, and it changes directions all the time. But this is not random. Everybody has acquired tendencies and patterns, which can be called energetic habits. And these are really the foundation of your personalities. So, becoming aware of your energetic habits is the best way to know yourself. More than that, learning to change these energetic habits is the best way to change who you are, if you will. Because the sad thing is, you are confined by your energetic habits. They put limits on who you are or who you could be. You're not even conscious of them, but they decide what you think life is like. Now, let's see the meaning usually given to these movements or the situations that may cause them. I will start with inward movements because they're omnipresent in our society. Here, I want to talk about the most common of them, that is contractions. As we grow up, people and events teach us to restrict the movement of our energy, the life within you. And this is obviously something we learn as kids. As the energy teacher, Julie Henderson, pointed out, just look at the difference between the liveliness of most children and the lifelessness of most adults. Something happened there. We learn to contract our energy to fit society's norms. Then, in our daily life, in many situations we don't like, we continue to have this habit of contracting, which produces an uncomfortable feeling. Basically, a contraction is an unspoken objection. It's the fight or flight reflex. By the way, most people also experience their sexual energy as contraction down here. Anyway, there's so much to say about this whole phenomenon of how and why people contract their energy that I'll make a whole video about it. Before broaching the next movement, let me give you an example of an inward motion that is more positive. As mentioned earlier, when you gather energy voluntarily to make it denser, it's a better way to protect yourself, as it reduces the influence of the people around you. In this case, people tend to experience you as powerful and charismatic, and not someone scared and rigid. Now let's talk about outward movements, focusing specifically on expansion. Usually, you expand your energy when you feel good about something, when you move to embrace the event. Because expanding is a natural movement of energy in general. Just look at the universe in perpetual expansion. To be more precise, our energy is constantly pulsating, moving inward and outward. And this pulsation is pleasurable if you're in harmony with it. But because of our personal energetic habits, we are resisting it. We're trying to block it. And we're getting disconnected from it. And the best way to break those habits, in my opinion, is to learn to feel open and expand your energy. And that's why energy expansion is the major theme of my channel. Like David Deida says, in any moment, we can choose to open or close. So, if you can learn to expand your energy, even in situations you don't like, you get the power to feel good in any situation. Nice, isn't it? How do you do that? Well, that's a discussion for another time. But I'll tell you one of the best ways to produce an expansion for beginners. Do a conscious relaxation, whatever form it takes. And after a while, you may even feel an eruption of energy within you. By the way, this is a weight of water type of practice. One more point before moving to the next movement. Is it possible to expand too far for your own good? Yes, at one point, this outward movement may make you feel ungrounded and out of touch. And ultimately, you may feel like you're losing your sense of self or identity. Now, let's talk about our third category, that is upward movements. I'd like to present two examples, one more pleasant and one that is less so. In the same way, outward movements are associated with well-being, upward movements are often linked to joy and happiness. Isn't this obvious, especially when you have a sudden burst of joy and you feel that rising sensation within? Actually, there's an upward movement in all happiness. You even notice this in your body language. When you smile, everything in your face goes up, whereas in a sad face, everything goes down. Now, let's have a quick look at one problematic upward movement. Julie Henderson calls it ballooning. This happens when you keep your energy in your upper body, sometimes above your shoulders, either out of excitement or as a defense mechanism. The possible problem here is that your energy stays like up in the air and is unsupported, and that's impossible to maintain for a long time. For example, ballooning happens spontaneously in parties, especially when there's flirtation, because of the natural exhilaration that follows that movement in the beginning. Also, people can move their energy up and out in this tiptoe way to protect themselves. It's true that when you send lots of energy upward, it's easier to pay attention to the people you're interacting with, and that is usually attractive to those people. But it can also be a way to control the situation, and in the long run, it is not sustainable. Now let's turn to our last movement, the downward movement. On the positive side, moving and keeping some of your energy in the lower part of your body is a great way to counterbalance ballooning. When you're grounded, you feel more stable, and it's easier to manage your inner energy as you wish. Of course, downward movements of energy are also associated with being sad and depressed, or having low energy in general. But there's obviously a big difference between losing your energy through a habit of collapse and having a consistent energetic connection with the earth. One leads to fatigue and the other to a sense of security and confidence. Did you know that everyone, without exception, feels a downward movement on a daily basis? Actually, it's so heavy that it causes you to lose consciousness. Of course, I'm talking about going to sleep here. When you're tired, you feel the same movement, but to a lesser extent, of course. As you can see on this chart, the same energy movement can mean very different things, mostly depending on whether it's done deliberately or unconsciously. I'd like to add that masculine energy is usually felt as more grounded, meaning downward motion, whereas feminine energy is more flowing, meaning upward motion. Another topic to be developed later. Now, your mission is to notice how your energy moves according to situations and events. Actually, you can start by imagining yourself in some situations and feel how your energy reacts. Like, for example, when you wait in line, when you have an argument with someone, when you make love, when you meet an old friend, when four people step into the elevator you're in, and so on and so on and so forth. Most people don't feel these energy movements as movements, but as feelings and emotions. But after a while, you notice a very interesting phenomenon. It is the energy movements themselves that produce your feelings. This means that your feeling can be independent of the event. But nobody knows about this crucial fact related to living in a human body, right? We'll have to pursue this interesting conversation in other videos. Thank you for your presence, and see you soon.